Hello there. Welcome into a Wednesday edition of the show. So glad to have you, whether you're listening on your radio, streaming the show online at extrasports1300.com, or you've downloaded the Extra Sports 1300 app to do your listening. And that app is, of course, sponsored by Diversus Health, mental health, and well-being for all. A veritable cornucopia of sports topics await you, and I'd love to get your thoughts. 719-247-1313. You can text or call in said thoughts, or you can tweet them at me at Gingerly Tweets. Today, David Adelman and Josh Kroenke met with the media as Adelman had his introductory press conference as now the full-blown head coach of the Denver Nuggets. But David Adelman's hire, as we have discussed, really takes a back seat to what the organization does above him. Because really, I think it's a two-pronged thing. One, I think you've seen enough from David Adelman to believe in him to a certain extent, as opposed to some nameless, faceless potential outside hire. The way the team responded to him, and you'll hear David Adelman talking about that a little bit later, but I think that there is a level of belief in David Adelman as the head coach of the Denver Nuggets. But also, if you believe that there are some deep-seated issues with this roster, David Adelman is not going to be necessarily the guy to fix it. Right? The roster is not his job. That's the GM. So I felt today watching this press conference that it was, yes, we want to talk to David Adelman. We want to get his thoughts, but really we want another shot at Josh Kroenke. And not a shot in a negative way, but just we want to lob more questions at him about where this organization goes from here. And I've brought up before this idea of, is it can't or won't with the Denver Nuggets when it comes to fixing their issues? Do they not have the ability to, or are they unwilling to do it? And they are very different than one another. And one, I feel like, is a much more acceptable answer to that question. The feeling I got from Josh Kroenke about a week ago, when he sat there by himself at the postseason press conference, was that in many ways the Nuggets wouldn't fundamentally change their team, wouldn't touch the core four players in order to make this team fit better what the direction the NBA is going. It was an unwillingness, is kind of the vibe I got from Josh Kroenke, and that to me is the unacceptable answer. You can't look at this team, and I don't want to hear about the injuries that they sustained and if Russell Westbrook wouldn't have torn ligaments in his hand and this, that, and the other. I'm telling you, the Nuggets would be facing the same fate the Minnesota Timberwolves are facing tonight if they had played Oklahoma City one series later. They are getting passed up in the Western Conference. There's a new team every year that's better than them. This idea that they're so close, they're right on the cusp, I don't believe it. So I come at it from a place of this roster needs in many ways, a significant change to it. And that's why I do look at the core four as a likely place that you go to try and get that done. And being unwilling, as Josh Kroenke kind of seemed about a week ago, is unacceptable. Because I'm all for the depth thing, right? I get it. And I understand that David Adelman's predecessor was not as bought into that vision as David Adelman seems to be, and as is necessary in today's NBA. But whether you use the core four to address that depth issue, or as we discussed yesterday, prompted by the excellent text sent in by Aaron, let's not forget or let's not lose sight of the fact that maybe the core of this team isn't right. Maybe the core of this team is not what they were a couple of years ago. So, and that's why I said it's equally viable paths for the Denver Nuggets to take this offseason. And hey, if they could do both, amazing. But the idea of chasing depth, getting more depth to the roster, is as viable as taking one of your core four players and upgrading him, whether that's Porter or whether that's Jamal Murray. I think they are equally viable. But I have a hard time believing that the Denver Nuggets can make the changes they need while leaving the core four players intact. I don't know how you orchestrate a deal where you're like, hey, Peyton Watson and Julian Strawther for Kevin Durant. Or we're going to take Peyton Watson and turn him into two veteran bench players. Like, I don't see how you can do it. So Josh Kroenke gave off the feeling to me that there was more of an unwillingness than an inability to make changes to the roster. And that's, to me, that's an unacceptable position to take. Now, if you can't, because you're so hamstrung, because you made mistakes in the past, in the recent past, with some of these guys, it is still very disappointing, but it is more understandable to say, yeah, you know, I can kind of look at it. And Michael Porter had a litany of issues in the playoffs. How much can you get for him? Or Jamal Murray, you're showing diminishing returns on him. What can you get from him? It's disappointing, but I can understand that. But you have to be willing. You have to be willing to really look at this and say, outside of number 15, everything has to be on the table. And if you put everything on the table, and as the offseason progresses, you got to say, well, that's not viable. We can't do that. We're not getting anything for this guy. Then okay. But you have to go in with an open mind and to shut yourself off of the idea of trading a Jamal Murray or trading a Michael Porter in order to accomplish your goals and make your roster fit today's NBA a little bit better. Then you already lost and you're not going to do anything. So today, the credit I will give Josh Kroenke is it did seem like there was a change of tone. He was asked the question, I believe it was Mark Kisla. I'll give him credit because I thought it was a very pointed question. There was a lot of, I believe in the guys that we have. The last time Josh Kroenke spoke. And part of the reason I keep stumping for an outside hire when it comes to general manager is I think they need somebody that doesn't have the loyalty to some of these players that people within the organization do. You think about this team being largely homegrown. You grow attached to players. And I understand that. And I'm not criticizing Josh Kroenke or anyone in the organization for having a great affinity for Michael Porter, knowing what he has battled and what the prognosis was for his career coming out of Missouri, and the fact that he's defied many expectations in terms of how good of an NBA player he can be, or how available of an NBA player he could be. I don't want to trash on the Denver Nuggets because they like these guys and they watch them grow up and they're invested in them. But that's precisely why you need someone from the outside to come in and say, that's all well and good, but you're not going to get this, the thing you need, unless you give up this. And that's just the fact of the matter. And that kind of the reality check within the organization. And that's why I've stumped for an outside hire. And what Mark Kiszla asked him was, you said that you believed in the guys that you have, and maybe the options are internal. How willing are you to bring in a general manager who would challenge that belief? Here's Josh Kroenke's answer.
There's a firm belief that they can achieve their ultimate goal. Can they achieve that as currently constructed? I think the answer, as Yoke said after the playoffs ended, was obviously no. So we need to take a hard look at how we can raise our ceiling going forward, whether that's internally or externally.
And it's funny, when he said that, I kind of chuckled, because what were we talking about yesterday? The Nuggets giving off the vibe that they were more concerned with their floor than their ceiling, that they couldn't risk, trading a Jamal Murray and the bottom falling out. When I think that they should be looking at their ceiling, they should be looking at, and maybe this is more of an argument to upgrade the core, to take a Jamal Murray or a Michael Porter and turn them into something better than those guys, rather than taking two lesser players that are going to make you deeper. Maybe if you're focused on the ceiling, that's the move that you make. But I was pleased to hear Josh Kroenke talk about the ceiling rather than the floor. And to be out front and to reiterate what Nikola Jokic said, just acknowledging that they are not good enough right now. It's not injuries. It's not if they were healthy. They're not better than Oklahoma City. How do they get better? He didn't say we got to look at how we get healthier. We have to get better. The players, the collection of players that we have as currently constructed are not good enough to beat Oklahoma City. Stop with all the garbage about how close they were because they took them to a seventh game. Understand that the Oklahoma City Thunder have grown up in these playoffs, that the Denver Nuggets have awakened a beast, and they're not this young, plucky, upstart franchise anymore. And that, what you just heard, is Josh Kroenke acknowledging we're not better. Personnel-wise, we're not better than that team. And I think that is such a major difference. We all understand that there's probably more meat on the bone with some of these younger players. Even a Christian Brown can probably do some improvement. Like, we understand that part of the improvement of this basketball team has to come from within. But the acknowledgement that maybe we don't have the right 12 or the right 8 when it comes to a playoff rotation. That's, I think, what, and you could tell me at 719-247-1313, isn't that what you want to hear? Don't you at least want that acknowledgement that we are not good enough? And then acknowledging that while internal improvement is always going to be an option, maybe it's not the best option. Maybe there's some of these guys on this roster, and I'll not to pick on Peyton Watson, but I'll throw out Peyton Watson because he's been in the league 4 years. How much more can there be? So to me, it was just important for Josh Kroenke today to acknowledge that we're not good enough. Because it's such a loser's lament to say, well, if we were just healthy, they're not good enough. They're not more talented. How do you become more talented? It's not just internal, it's external. And I thought today, maybe it was an awakening, an epiphany. Maybe it was just a pivot. Maybe he just explained himself better. But I thought that was the biggest takeaway today, that it's not necessarily an unwillingness. Now, they may not view some of these players the way that I do. Maybe there is an unwillingness when it comes to certain players, like, say, a Jamal Murray. Maybe for them, that's just a non-starter. But maybe for Michael Porter, they would be amenable if they could improve, if they could upgrade what they have. And then if the answer ultimately, when you go out onto the open market and try to trade these guys, if you get, you're not selling us anything that we want to buy, then that sucks. And I wonder if the Denver Nuggets can honestly do any better next season than they did this year, but at least you tried. And it just seemed like a week ago that there was an unwillingness on the part of Josh Kroenke to entertain the idea that all the answers aren't within the confines of Ball Arena. And today it was much more acknowledgement, not just, hey, I'm going to text my buddy who works for this team, right? The acknowledgement of maybe the best option is a general manager from the outside. Maybe the best way to upgrade the roster is to trade somebody on the roster now that we have great affinity for, but is not the player that we need him to be. And the acknowledgement that probably the best way, the most sure way for this Nuggets team to get better and to close the talent gap that they have between themselves and Oklahoma City, or solve some of the matchup problems that exist when they play the Minnesota Timberwolves, is a player not currently on the roster. That's step one. Admitting you have a problem, right? The Nuggets have a problem. They have a roster problem. And simply saying the players on the roster need to be better, it's not going to get you where you want to go. It can help. It can get you started. Now it does seem like there's a willingness. But do they have the ability? That's what we're getting ready to find out as we approach the offseason in the NBA. Plenty more on today's press conference with David Adelman and Josh Kroenke. I don't want to gloss over David Adelman because it's a significant hire. The timing of it to hire him before the GM. There's a lot to David Adelman getting hired and what we can expect from him as a Nuggets head coach moving forward. But I wanted to get that part out first, that it did seem like there was a bit of a change of tone from Josh Kroenke today for the better. Take your thoughts on it. 719-247-1313. Just getting going on this Wednesday edition of Drive Time Sports. David Adelman continuing on as the Nuggets head coach had his introductory press conference today. And it took to the very end of the 30-minute press conference today, but I thought in terms of David Adelman and what he had to say, the most important thing was saved for last.
These guys are some of the most accomplished players in the NBA, not just the last 3 years, the last 6, 7, 8 years that have been through the wars of the playoffs and seen it all. So to develop trust with them during that time was really important to me. That's going to continue. And I want to talk about this before this is over. What you saw from these guys communication-wise is going to continue next year. These guys, this is their team. And what they want to do next year and the goals they have is going to come down to what they want. And I'm there to help, to shepherd this. But this is about them.
What you saw from Nikola Jokic, what you read that allegedly Aaron Gordon did with Russell Westbrook, going to him and talking to him about whatever it was that Ramona Shelburne reported on his disposition or the buy-in, whatever it was. But this stuff, and I know the Nuggets will routinely say this happens all the time. It doesn't. You watch this team all the time. I watch this team all the time. The communication level, and it was night one. It was night one, the Sacramento Kings game, when David Adelman took over. The thing that Christian Brown said that has stuck with me is that the communication was better than it had been. And he was very honest and said with Michael Malone, they would always look to him to tell them what to do. Not because Michael Malone was a ruthless dictator, but these guys came into the league under the tutelage of Michael Malone. And David Adelman has referenced this multiple times in the short time that he has been the interim head coach. These are grown men now. Like, yeah, there are still younger guys like Julian Strawther and Deron Holmes and Jalen Pickett, but the players like Christian Brown, like Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter, Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, I'll even though he wasn't with the team when they won a championship, Russell Westbrook, you could throw into this mix as well. They're not at the point anymore where they need to be shown the way to get to an NBA Finals. They've all done it. Everybody I mentioned except Russell Westbrook has won a championship. And this idea that they needed a heavier hand and they needed someone to look to, no. It's on you now. And that's what David Adelman has continually stressed. And he's not, it's hard to listen to David Adelman and not think everything is a shot at his predecessor. I know it's not. I know he has great respect for Michael Malone, but it's hard to not hear him talk, especially in ways that are different than Michael Malone, and maybe thinking that this is the better way to go and him feeling this way. And he probably feels like it's a better way to go, but it's not about dumping on the guy before. It's just this team has evolved. This team's in a different place. And what Michael Malone, I don't think, was ever able to do was pivot to allow the team to be more player-led, to not be such a heavy hand, to not call out the players all the time. Now, as media members and as fans, I think we appreciated when Michael Malone would say what kind of we were thinking about the effort that we would watch from the Denver Nuggets. But I don't know that kind of stuff is received as well behind the scenes as it is by you and I. Or at least maybe that talk still needs to go on, but it needs to go on behind closed doors. David Adelman press conferences are not going to be as entertaining as Michael Malone press conferences. But given where this team is, it's probably better that way. They probably need somebody that is a little bit more focused on, tactics than the rah-rah, the stick and carrot stuff. I don't think that Michael Malone was wrong for this team. Clearly, he was the right guy for the job. Clearly, they nailed the hire. The guy led them to a title. But he's the wrong guy for where they're at now. And a lot of the stuff I hear from David Adelman, yes, he's inexperienced. Yes, you could find a coach out there that has won a title and has a better resume. But everything I hear from David Adelman is he gets it. He gets where this team is now and what they need from him. And what they need from him is, quite frankly, less than what they needed from Michael Malone. And that's where the friction came from. Not the Michael Malone, Calvin Booth thing, although that was a part of it, but the Michael Malone and the players. It was just, he was a bit much. If I could put it simply, I think for a lot of the players, Michael Malone was just a lot. And they're beyond that point. San Antonio needs that. Like Houston with an Ime Udoka. The Knicks with Tom Thibodeau. Like there are these coaches that you bring into a team that's very talented, but a team that needs to be shown how to win. And maybe need someone to get on them a little bit. I don't know that the Nuggets need nearly as much of that anymore. And David Adelman is going to let these guys kind of continue to have the reins. And this be more of a player-led team, as so many champions and elite teams in the NBA are. It's the Phil Jackson thing that I keep going back to. Once he taught Michael Jordan the triangle offense, he didn't need to do much else. Right? Michael Jordan policed the team, and he just needed to control egos. Now, the Nuggets are not those Chicago Bulls teams. Don't misunderstand me in that regard. But there should be a level of ownership, and these players should be able to hold each other accountable more than needing the coach to get on them. So I thought that was the most important thing that David Adelman said throughout the entirety of this press conference today. But beyond that, that's more of a, intangible, behind the scenes. What about on the court? How much of what David Adelman is going to bring to this team did we see in just 3 regular season games and 14 playoff games? Here's David Adelman on that.
Yeah, I think you saw some of it defensively. I mean, I think we have to be, much more creative throughout the season. And that's not just zoning or things like that, but I think it gets guys through the year healthier. You can demand a very aggressive man defense, but I think you can change things up. I think we have high IQ players that allows you to be, more variety defensively. And I think offensively, obviously you're a top 5 in the league, but it showed in the Oklahoma City series, our execution has to get better. You can run similar things that we've ran that have been very successful. And I thought, our transition game was very impactful throughout the season, but some of that does not translate to the playoffs. And so that's a major goal for us. We have to get back to being an execution-based team. If that takes away some of our pace numbers or whatever the analytics want to say, I think that's okay if it wins you a game in May.
I think this highlights another difference between he and Michael Malone, but also a very similar mindset. What David Adelman is saying there, he is being kind. What he's really getting at there when he's talking about the defense is that flat out the Denver Nuggets, save for Aaron Gordon And in spurts, Christian Braun, got to give Christian Braun a lot of credit for the way that he defended SGA at times in that series. But other than Aaron Gordon, they don't have one plus on-ball defender. Not one. And Michael Malone knew that. And David Adelman knew that. David Adelman knows that, present tense. But there's a difference in how they're going to handle it. Michael Malone kept challenging them and challenging them and challenging them. They got to be better defensively. Whereas David Adelman is saying, you're going to see them play more zone. And I remember a junior high basketball coach that I had hated the zone defense, hated it. Thought it was the laziest defense there is. And a lot of coaches don't like it. It's why Jim Boeheim for so long was such an outlier. Like he's playing this soft zone defense where all these other college coaches are telling their guys to man up and play Nolan Richardson's 40 minutes of hell type defense. A lot of coaches don't like it. Michael Malone just kept challenging these guys to be better on-ball defenders, and David Adelman's like, I don't have plus defenders on this team. We're not a good defensive team. In the grand scheme of things, we're not. So I'm going to do some things to help them. Like we're going to run more zone. And he is right about saving legs a little bit. Right? It's a grind to just man up one-on-one and defend a guy for 4 quarters. It's exhausting. And to do it for 82 nights, they need some help. They need to have their legs under them when the playoffs come around. And they also need to be helped out a little bit with the tactics, because they are just incapable of going, I got that guy, you got that guy, you got that guy, and slapping the floor and let's get to it. They can't. So a difference there with David Adelman versus Michael Malone. David Adelman's not in that way trying to ask them to be something that they're not, while still acknowledging the reality that Michael Malone kept talking about. They're not a good defensive team. David Adelman can say we have high IQ players that could go in and out. That's nice of him to say. And they do have high IQ basketball players. It's not a lie, but what he's saying, if you read between the lines, is I know that we're not a good defensive team. I have to do things to help them schematically. And as far as the offensive side of the ball goes, or offensive end of the court, I guess, to be more correct for the sport. Again, not a new idea. Michael Malone talked about it. The fact that they can run up and down the floor is great. It won't get them anywhere in the playoffs unless they're able to create turnovers. And we already just covered why the Denver Nuggets don't create a lot of turnovers or haven't been able to. You got to be able to play in the half court. And David Adelman brought up the Indiana Pacers. What the Pacers are doing and why they should be so respected. And everybody, saying, oh, it's going to suck to see OKC and Indiana in the NBA Finals. Like, if you're going at that from the Indiana side of it, you're not watching. Indiana is fun as hell to watch. They play super fast, and it is a speed that not even OKC plays at all the time. And it's so different than what wins in the playoffs. And it's remarkable that they've been this successful with it. But you got to execute in the half court. And the Denver Nuggets did not do near enough of that against a team like OKC. And that's David Adelman saying it's great that we can get out and run when we create turnovers. It's exciting and it's fun to watch. It's not going to win us games in May. Got to be able to execute in the half court, both offensively and defensively. But I think there's a feeling there from David Adelman that defensively, I got to help them. Offensively, I shouldn't have to. Jokic, Murray, Gordon, Porter, even Christian Brown are good enough offensive players that they shouldn't be turning the ball over 20 times in a playoff game. So the defense, David Adelman will be there to help. With the offense, that's more, I think, on the players to execute. More from David Adelman and Josh Kroenke coming up in a little bit. We'll stick with basketball because did you catch what Charles Barkley had to say last night? Interesting take when it comes to this whole face of the league stuff. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. Well, we're about there, aren't we? Pacers winning last night, game 4, and now both the West and the East are in 3-1 series. Tonight, the Oklahoma City Thunder can clinch their spot in the NBA Finals. We are also at 2 3-1 series in the NHL as well. I have a fun little question about that coming up in a little bit. But last night, Charles Barkley, being the beacon of truth that he is on the TNT broadcast, sad that we are losing it in its current form. I do hope that he has a profound impact on ESPN. I really do, because I don't agree with everything that especially Shaquille O'Neal says. I don't agree blindly with everything that they say, and at times it could be a little too goofy for me, but my goodness, they are so much better than ESPN at doing this. So much better. And I hope they have a positive impact. But with that being said, Charles Barkley, one of the last times he'll be on TNT, said something amazing when talking about this face of the league stuff that we keep talking about in the NBA.
OKC is the best team in the NBA. I've been telling y'all that for 2 months. Hey, ESPN, I love you guys. Don't try to make Anthony Edwards the face of the NBA. The face of the NBA is Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Joker, and Giannis. You can't give it to people. They have to take it. And Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is taking it.
And I think he's right. And as much as I rag on ESPN a little bit, I have to raise my hand when it comes to the anointing of Anthony Edwards. And I talked about this yesterday. I just think we're too early on all of this. I think he has every opportunity to be one of the biggest stars in the league. I think he has an opportunity to win a title, which is the most you can ask right now in today's NBA, is that you get one. Because in recent times, tell me the other team that has found their way back to win another title. It hasn't happened in 7 years. I believe in Anthony Edwards, but we're early. And I think I was one that was a little quick to anoint him. Not ESPN quick, but I've kind of wanted him to, because I like a lot of what Anthony Edwards brings to the table. And I think he's as a player, a good representative for the league, right? The way he plays, the way he talks, I'm a fan. But he's just early, he's not there yet. And Charles Barkley's point about, if you're going to be the face of the league, you got to take it. And pointing out those 3 players. Now, I would say Shea, it's like a present and future tense. Like, he is taking it. He's taking that mantle. But Giannis and Jokic have been widely regarded by people who know basketball as arguably the best players in the league for at least 5 years. With Giannis, it's been longer. But as I'm saying all of this, to appreciate, because that sends chills down the ESPN spine. Even Shea, who again is Canadian, why do we have to look at Canada like it's some far off land? Like, Shea speaks perfect English. There's nothing lost in translation. He is incredibly marketable, except for, we don't love the flopping stuff. But like, we act like these Canadians are from the other side of the globe. It's like, no, they're just up there. Why a Canadian being potentially the face of the league is such a bad thing, I don't understand it, because America, it's like, it's not the NFL. It's the NBA. It's an international sport to begin with. But Jokic and Giannis a little bit more, because the way he plays, the dominant style, dunking on people and mean mugging them and stuff. I think people have been more amenable to the idea that Giannis is the face of the league than Jokic, because Jokic plays the game in a very different way. It's not for everybody. He's a bit of a savant. But I appreciate, obviously, Charles Barkley recognizing that there are players in this league, Jokic and Giannis, who have been doing this for longer than Anthony Edwards has, longer than even Shea has or Halliburton. But as I'm talking about this and I'm listening to Charles Barkley last night, I think the problem with the face of the league conversation is that we don't even quite know what that means. And let me explain. The face of the NBA is LeBron James. Point blank, period. He is the face of the league. And now you can't do it because I've been talking about all these NBA players for the last few minutes, so it's going to ruin it, and I'm leading the witness here. But really think about it. If I were to tell you to close your eyes and I said, let's do word association. When I say NBA, what player are you going to say? Now, you may get a regional answer. Maybe around here you would get a few more jokers, but I promise you, to the casual, they know much more about LeBron than they do Jokic. LeBron James is the face of the league because the face of the league is not necessarily the best player. What Charles Barkley is referring to is who's taking the mantle of being the best player in the league. Giannis had it. Jokic took it from him, but Giannis is still on the periphery of that conversation. And now Shea, being runner-up last year in MVP, winning it this year, leading Oklahoma City to the NBA Finals and probably an NBA title. We're going to have this debate, and I'm going to tell you that we haven't had enough of SGA to say that he's the best player in the league. That it would still be Nikola Jokic. But Shea is ascending, and Shea is starting to take that mantle. But that's the mantle of the best player in the league. That's not the mantle of the face of the NBA. Face of the NBA is marketability. Face of the league is brand recognition. Face of the league is, in a deeper way, the guy that stands for what you think of when you think of the league. And even though we're right now in the midst of this pivot to where there's absolute parity, in every NBA city seems to have a star player except Utah. And they're not going to have one because they didn't win the lottery. But almost everybody has a player that you could argue is in the top dozen. They're not all actually in there because math doesn't work out. But everyone has a star. Most teams have two upper echelon players. But there are no super teams anymore. There are no dynasties anymore. So in many ways, LeBron James is the face of the league that is changing, and he represents kind of the pivot away. It's a pivot away from LeBron James and everything he stands for. But I think we're still too early to completely divorce ourselves from the NBA being this star-driven league, this super teams, all of dynasties, the MJ LeBron GOAT debate. Like, there's still so much of that still in the league now, even as we're talking about more parity and smaller markets rising and all of this kind of stuff. But I still think right now on May 28, 2025, LeBron James is the face of the league. And I think the problem, while Charles Barkley threw out good points, I would just take out face of the league and put best player in the league, because that's what he was talking about. ESPN wants to make Anthony Edwards the face of the league. They want to talk about Anthony Edwards like they talk about LeBron James. So he's right that ESPN's trying to make Anthony Edwards the face of the league, but it's for many other reasons besides whether he's the best player or not. And that's the thing. And I mean, it's like the GOAT debate. My tiebreaker, if there is one, if I need a tiebreaker between Michael Jordan, the player, and LeBron James, the player, is the impact that Michael Jordan had on the league, the marketability of Michael Jordan, the cult following of Michael Jordan. That's the stuff, to me, that makes him the GOAT. I can say that and still acknowledge that from an all-around skill set, LeBron James is probably a better basketball player. But I think they're two different things. And it's the same thing with the face of the league and its best player. I don't think maybe there was a time where Giannis was challenging for that face of the league. I don't think Nikola Jokic has ever really been in consideration for the face of the league, even while he's been the best player in the league for half a decade. Because there's other stuff that goes into it. 719-247-1313. Coming up next, David Adelman, no longer interim head coach of the Denver Nuggets, just head coach. What does he need in order to get the Nuggets back to where they want to be? And is the guy to give it to him in the organization or outside of it? That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. Welcome in, Drive Time Sports on this Wednesday. Appreciate you watching me. My name is Ryan. On our social media platforms at Extra Sports 1300, you could be a part of the show. give your opinion on the day's topics. We've been heavy on the basketball today, and we'll continue to be, but a little hockey, little football coming up as well on the show. We're just a third of the way through. So 719-247-1313. If you want to call or text in your thoughts, you can also tweet me at Gingerly Tweets. Today, David Adelman met with the media for the first time as the head coach of the Denver Nuggets, no longer interim. And he was asked what the Denver Nuggets need more than anything else if they are going to get back to where they want to be, which is the NBA Finals.
Consistent shooting, obviously the way we get guarded, and that's nothing new. That's not like it's just for us. I mean, if you're watching these series, Shea and Anthony Edwards are getting triple teamed. They're coming from all over the place. And we brought this up during the playoffs, and it's funny, Julian's sitting right here. I mean, his game 6, was incredible. And then you saw what Lou Dort did, in game 5. Like there's a premium on shot making at, the times you need it.
And that was also my biggest takeaway from this series with OKC is that they just don't have dudes that can knock down shots. And you've heard the phrase, it's a make or miss league. It's so true. Yeah, a lot of stuff has to be right with you in order to win a title. But you got to hit shots. And the number of corner threes, which should be one of the highest percentage shots in the NBA. It's funny. I watch NBA games with my youngest son, and anytime anyone has a corner three, he said, corner three, like almost gonna make it. Because that's the NBA he grew up on. That corner threes, anyone can make him. Nuggets didn't. Repeatedly. Whether it's Christian Brown, who was, you should really be around 50%. I think 45% corner three percentage is average. Shooting in the 30s. And don't get me started on some of the projectiles that Russell Westbrook threw up from the corner at times during these playoffs. So when we talk about, because we've discussed a lot of who needs to go or what the Nuggets need to offer up in order to get what they need. Now we're to the stage of what they need. More than anything else, with the best passer in the league and the best passing big man to ever walk the face of the earth, the idea that there is a team that largely can't knock down corner threes is perplexing, to say the least. The number of great looks that you're going to get playing with Nikola Jokic and you can't knock them down. Aaron Gordon is a good example and probably the best example if you are in line with Josh Kroenke's main mode of thinking, because even though I feel like Josh Kroenke has acknowledged that maybe all the answers aren't in the right building, I think the hope maybe, if you're in line with Josh Kroenke's hope, is that you could get a bunch of Aaron Gordons. And what I mean by that is the work that Aaron Gordon put in to improve his three-point shooting ability should be a signal to everyone else on the roster. Why can't you do this? This is a guy that has been in the league for a long time, longer than most of the guys on the Nuggets roster. And yet, in year whatever he's in, he's improving his three-point shooting. Nikola Jokic is another one. But the unfair thing is, gosh, can the Nuggets ask him to do another thing? Can somebody else knock down threes, or does Jokic have to do that himself? But you have Gordon and Jokic who both improved shooting the three, and I don't know that there is another great example on the roster of anybody that was any better outside of those two. Michael Porter, that's your DNA. That's who you are. You got to be better. Christian Brown, that's part of your job now. Jamal Murray, we all love the step backs. Can you knock down a few threes? They need shooting. So whatever trade you want to put in the trade machine, and no matter who you want to give up, just make sure that it gets the Nuggets a shooter. And that's why I say that be careful with trying to trade Michael Porter. Be careful with it. Because that's kind of what he does. And maybe what needs to happen this season is maybe we got to abandon the, hey, Mike, if your shot's not falling, at least be a willing defender and at least rebound the ball. Maybe no. Maybe just if you don't hit a three, then keep shooting threes. Maybe just do that. Maybe there should be enough other guys on the floor that can do the other stuff. Just knock down threes. So you got to be careful if you're wanting Michael Porter to go, because you got to make sure that you still have some semblance of three-point shooting on the roster. And I'm not saying you need a three-point specialist, but with all that Aaron Gordon does and all that Nikola Jokic does, I don't look at them first to say they got to be the ones. There are other guys on this roster that you go, well, if you're not knocking down threes, what are you doing? I look at those guys first before I look at Aaron Gordon, who is easily the best two-way player that the Nuggets have. He might be the only one. And the rebounding that he does and everything like that, like, it's great that he raised his game three-point shooting wise. It's awesome. And the heroics he had during the playoffs, it was great, especially in that OKC series in game one. But there are some other guys that they should be the ones. The Nuggets got some players to improve on their three-point shooting. I just don't know if it was the players that needed to. So whether it's internal or external, that the answer to that question is they got to get more of it. Got to get more shooting. Now to the $10,000 question when it comes to David Adelman taking over full-time as the Nuggets head coach. What about the young guys? How about developing them? What does that look like to you?
We have people in this building that are more than capable of creating the depth that we need. It's also me creating a different kind of relationship with these players. Being the head coach as opposed to lead assistant is a lot different. And those expectations have to be defined for them. I need to be active and go see players, make sure they understand what they can do to have an impact on this team next year.
And again, getting back to everything sounding like a refute of the previous head coach. And I don't think everything David Adelman is saying today is Michael Malone didn't do this and I will. But it's hard for me not to hear that. I wonder if the feeling with the younger players, amongst the younger players, if you ask them, would be under Michael Malone, it was, I'll get to you when I get to you. Right? Your spot on this team is not promised. your playing time is not promised. You show me things and I'll play you. I don't know if that goes far enough. What David Adelman is suggesting here is that he goes to a Julian Strother, he goes to a Deron Holmes, a Jalen Pickett, all these young guys, and says, what I see from you is this. Julian Strother, I'd love for you to be better defensively, but I'm going to call it for what it is. Dude, I need you to make shots. I need you to take the 90 seconds you had in game 6, and I need you to be that all the time. You got to hit shots. That's what you're going to do. Peyton Watson, we're not going to bother as much with you anymore trying to improve your offensive game. You're just going to be this rim protecting defensive star. And everything you do this summer, and David Adelman talked about this, guys improving their game. He wants them to, but he wants them to improve in the ways that will help the team. And if they need Julian Strother to be more of a dead-eye shooter, that's what he should be working on most. Not adding a mid-range game or trying to, you want a holistic approach to improvement, but what are you putting in the most time? Clearly, Aaron Gordon spent the vast majority of his offseason this year improving his three-point shot, and you heard those anecdotes throughout the playoff broadcast. He said, and I'm sure Aaron Gordon has a growth mindset and says, I want to be a little bit better at everything, but I'm going to devote most of my time to this thing because our team needs it. And that's what David Adelman is saying. Ideally, all these guys would improve their all-around game. But there are some aspects of their game that they need to spend more time on. And I don't know if that happened with Michael Malone. Or maybe the answer always with Michael Malone was just using Christian Braun as a reference point, defense. So you have Julian Strother, maybe not working on his shot as much, working on his defense more. Peyton Watson doing that, Jalen Pickett doing that. Maybe that's what it is, that all these guys felt because of the success that Christian Braun has had and the fact that Christian Braun seemed to break the mold when it comes to young players, and Michael Malone trusted him, and the way he got on the court was playing defense. So maybe there was a feeling within the Nuggets locker room that, hey, if I'm a young player my first 2 years in the league, I'm going to have to defend if I want to get on the court. And here's David Adelman saying, not necessarily. That could be the answer for some guys, but for others, it's like, dude, I'll use Julian Strother as another example. Julian Strother, if you could shoot over 50% from the corner, you're going to be in there. I'm going to find minutes for you. A prevailing theme here of the firing of Michael Malone, the naming of David Adelman as the interim coach, what we have seen from a David Adelman-led team over 3 games of the regular season, 14 games of the playoffs, and even up to this press conference today, communication. Communication. It was poor, now it's better. And David Adelman's trying to take it to the next level. Communicate with every single player clearly what you expect of them. And not just say, I'll get to you when I get to you. Or have the same message for every young player. You got to play defense to get out on the court. Maybe not. Now, for what David Adelman needs, getting back to the shooting, Josh Kroenke asked plenty of questions today about a GM, and could David Adelman, even though it seemed like he did it a little bit backwards here by hiring Adelman before he found a new GM, which Josh Kroenke spoke about, and I'll get to that. But now, because it's flipped and the head coach is hired before the GM, does that mean David Adelman is going to have a say on who becomes the Nuggets general manager?
I've already been thinking a lot about the front office. I mean, first of all, I want to give a big shout out to Ben Tenzer, just like DA did. Ben's been unbelievable since he took the reins. This time of year, there's, through the playoffs, there's minimal things that go on in that world from a roster standpoint. But Ben and I have been spending a lot of time together talking about each individual player, how we think we can improve them, as individuals and within the context of the team. Ben has a lot of great ideas of how we can improve the front office, both internally and externally. And I'm also soliciting a lot of opinions outside. DA will come into that process at some point. But right now, I think it's just, focusing on getting him the right staff, making sure he has the right pillars underneath him to give him the most chances for success. But we'll come back to that at some point. And, as we reach a decision, I'll for sure bring him into the loop. But I think, the input will be relatively minimal because what I'll be looking for is cohesion between those two. And I think that, once we decide on that, I think that I'll have a lot of comfort in how they work together. And I think DA will as well.
So no. That's what you're getting at. No, David Adelman will not have input on who the new GM hire will be. This is Josh Kroenke's show. And it's not surprising because he's put down breadcrumbs this entire time. He's left clues. He felt he was too hands-off when Tim Connolly left and did not mind the store like he should have, and maybe rubber-stamped Calvin Booth when he shouldn't have. I don't think this is, and you could say this is good or this is bad. I don't think this is going to be a super collaborative hire. I think Josh Kroenke is taking in a lot of input from people. Maybe even David Adelman. It's not that he's not going to solicit opinions from David Adelman and others, but this is his hire. Make no mistake about it. This is Josh Kroenke's hire. And David Adelman will be expected to have a better working relationship with whoever Josh Kroenke hires than Michael Malone had with Calvin Booth. And David Adelman today very much took the tact of my job is to coach. That separation of powers. Because what happened in part when Calvin Booth became the general manager is that Michael Malone filled a power vacuum. Well, I'm no longer tenured employee here. Once Tim Connolly left, I'm not answering to this guy who just got promoted, who has been here for a shorter amount of time than I have. This is my show. That's really what was at the heart of all of this. There wasn't the division of labor. There wasn't the separation of powers. It was Michael Malone saying, this is my show. And maybe he wasn't wrong in some of the ways he was thinking, but Josh Kroenke's making sure that there is a clear separation. The GM will gather input from David Adelman on what he needs, which he will say is shooting. And then he will go out and do his job. And when he is done doing his job, David Adelman will then do his job. And David Adelman today even talked about how it's not about finding your best friend. Like he almost acknowledged that I may not get along with this person. They may not be my best buddy, but he clearly made a point today to acknowledge that he knows what his job is, and the GM is going to do his job, and he's going to do his job. But that all starts with Josh Kroenke's job, which is deciding on all of these, and then everyone is expected to be in lockstep on the direction of this basketball team. Notice, too, that Josh Kroenke gave a shout-out to Ben Tenzer. And I've said this, it's going to be a difficult sell job. if and when he just removes the interim tag from Ben Tenzer. It's going to be a difficult sell job. You can shout him out. You could talk about how much you enjoy having him, but we know nothing about this guy. And you appointed him interim general manager when there was like nothing for a general manager to do. So if that's the direction that they're going, and I kind of feel like 70-30, they are going to go with Ben Tenzer, you're going to have a difficult time selling that to the outside world. David Adelman got his audition. We saw it. And we approved. What are you going to point to when you make Ben Tenzer the general manager on what he's done to help the Denver Nuggets? Maybe there is something, but they haven't mentioned it yet. But no hire yet for the general manager. It's going to take a little while. And what I hope is that Josh Kroenke doesn't think by taking more time that that's going to be the sell job. And as I'm saying it, I kind of feel like maybe that's what it's going to be. That Josh Kroenke in his head is like, I'm probably going to go with Ben Tenzer. But I'll slow play it. I'll talk about all the outside voices I'm going to solicit to figure this out. And if I take a while to figure it out, then people will say, well, he did his due diligence. I don't know. I don't know that just taking a while is going to make us feel like you exhausted every option when it comes to general manager. And you already probably closed off the idea of a veteran GM coming in when you hire David Adelman. Oh, to that point, here's Josh Kroenke on hiring the head coach before the GM.
You know, when you're contemplating changing out coach and general manager, one of the things that I would look at from my perspective is, do we need a complete organizational reset, top to bottom, culturally? And that's why I made the decision at the end of the season, like I did, was probably to do a little bit of a litmus test on that. With the benefit of hindsight, I can look back and see that very clearly now. And I can also say very clearly that this organization does not need a cultural reset.
And then he went on to say that they needed a little bit of a reset. So we have degrees of resets, because organizational reset, that's exactly what you're doing. When you reset the power structure the way that you are, when you make such big moves as firing your GM and your head coach, that is in a way a reset. But I get it. There's another level to it, which is the roster. I don't know that the culture... Has anybody brought up that maybe the culture with the Denver Nuggets players isn't good? I think we worry about Russell Westbrook in that locker room a little bit. But every criticism that I've had of the Denver Nuggets is just their deficiencies as basketball players. I think they got a bunch of good guys in the locker room that get along. I don't know that we've talked very much about the Nuggets like not getting along with one another. But again, it goes back to Josh Kroenke making the decisions. It doesn't matter what order he hires them in, because one is not going to have a ton of input on the other. And when he feels like he has the right guy for job A or job B, he's going to make that move. And that's what it was with David Adelman. He saw what he needed to see from David Adelman, heard what he needed to hear, good to go. Because I'm not going to make that one of the perks of becoming the Nuggets general manager that you get to pick the head coach, because I'm picking the head coach. And it goes the same way with David Adelman. Just because he's in place does not mean he's going to have a say on who his general manager is. Little risky, I would say. Little backwards. But it's certainly what Josh Kroenke feels is right. 719-247-1313. We'll have more Drive Time Sports after this. I don't know if you've heard the news, but the Colorado Avalanche won the Mikko Rantanen trade. You may not have seen this because you may have tuned out from the Stanley Cup playoffs because of how much it hurts your heart to see two teams that aren't the Avalanche battling for a spot in the Stanley Cup final. But people have turned on Mikko Rantanen. They've turned on him. Saw a tweet pointing out that Mikko Rantanen, between Game 5 of the Colorado series and Game 3 of the Winnipeg series, had 17 points in 6 games. Rest of the playoffs, no goals, 4 assists in 11 games. And I see also on the social media, a lot of Avalanche fans chiming in and saying, see, welcome to the Mikko Rantanen experience. Too inconsistent for us. That's why we wanted him gone. I'm looking at, this isn't game to game. This is series to series. But I think that series to series can be a good indicator. Like, you can have a couple of bad games in a series and, bounce back. I think that's okay for most NHL players to have a game or two where you're not producing, as long as by the end of it, you can say that you helped your team win the series. And I'm looking at Mikko Rantanen's series stats. So starting in 2018-2019, that run, which ended with the Sharks in the second round, he had 7 points in the Flames series, 7 points in the Sharks series. In the bubble, his production went from 8 points against the Coyotes to 13 against the Stars. He was more productive as those playoffs were on. Then the Avs got beat. Thanks, Yoel Kiviranta. Then the year before they won the Cup, the year where Nathan MacKinnon said, I haven't won bleep, Mikko Rantanen had 5 points in the Blues series, 8 points against Vegas. Again, production going up. The year they won the Stanley Cup, his production from series to series went from 6 to 7 to 7 to 10. Not only did it go up, it was pretty consistent. He had 10 points in the Seattle series. And go on. Last year, 6 points round 1, 8 points round 2 when they lost to Dallas. This year, 9 points against the Avs. He goes up to 10 against Winnipeg, and now he goes down to 2. He has not, I'll have to acknowledge this. Mikko Rantanen has not had a good series against Edmonton, and they need him to. And Mikko Rantanen's lack of production is absolutely part of the reason why the Dallas Stars are facing a 3-1 deficit. But this misremembering of Mikko Rantanen being like this flaky playoff performer, series to series, I don't see it. Are we going so granular that it's game to game that Mikko Rantanen, if in a 6-game series, if he has back-to-back games where he doesn't produce, that's inconsistency? Mikko Rantanen has been a big-time playoff performer for the Colorado Avalanche. Arguably as good as any player on their roster. And the Dallas Stars absolutely are not where they are right now without Mikko Rantanen. Here's the issue. And this is not a misremembering of who Mikko Rantanen was. But we can't go too far. Mikko Rantanen was never only dependent on Nathan MacKinnon, a product of Nathan MacKinnon. Okay, that's not fair to him, and he certainly showed the Avalanche without having Nathan MacKinnon, he could do just fine. So he's not like this guy who's not really that good, and just because he played with one of the best centers in all of hockey, did he produce? Because I'm telling you, the Avs don't beat Edmonton in their 4-game series and go to the Stanley Cup final without Mikko Rantanen. Here's what I think people are finding out in real time, and it's only because we've never known Mikko Rantanen in this kind of a role before. He's the man for Dallas. The man. And the numbers show this out. If you look at Mikko Rantanen's time on the ice as these playoffs have progressed, he's been on the ice more and more and more and more. Pete DeBoer is leaning on him more and more and more than he had when he was playing for the Colorado Avalanche. Because on Dallas, with Robertson missing time and coming back, they've had to lean more on Mikko Rantanen and look to Mikko Rantanen to be the guy. Well, he's never been that before. And so if there's any realization to be made about Mikko Rantanen is, maybe he can't be far and away your best player. Because I mentioned Jason Robertson. He just scored his first goal of the playoffs the other night. Part of the reason why Mikko Rantanen is on the ice more and more and more is because this supposedly super deep Dallas Stars team all of a sudden has a depth problem. They're not getting production from the players that you expect them to have production from in this series with Edmonton. And so they go, Mikko Rantanen, save us, you're our only hope, playing him more on the ice, and Mikko Rantanen has not had that burden on his shoulders. As many wingers don't, if we're being entirely honest with one another. I mean, how, as great as Alexander Ovechkin is, like, he kept losing out to Sidney Crosby because Sidney Crosby impacts the game in more ways than Alexander Ovechkin does. So I don't think that this is, the Avs knew all along and now Dallas is figuring it out, because the Avalanche would have still had Nathan MacKinnon. So they weren't asking Mikko Rantanen to be the guy. And that's actually kind of why they traded him, because they felt like, because Mikko Rantanen is a winger and we still have Nathan MacKinnon, we can swap him out for lesser parts to make our team deeper. And I don't know, maybe there is some level of criticism that goes into Mikko Rantanen because he's got the big contract, and when you do, you're expected to produce. But I'm looking around at the Dallas Stars team. I'm like, they can't score 5-on-5. Where's Jason Robertson? Where's Wyatt Johnston? Where are all these other players that is supposed to make Dallas this super deep team? What are they doing? And the answer is nothing. They're not doing anything either. But as a philosopher once said, mo money, mo problems. Mikko Rantanen's got a lot of money now. He's on a team where when things get bad, they look to him. And he's kind of running out of gas. But this idea that he's been an inconsistent playoff performer throughout his career, I don't see it. In fact, I see a guy who's risen to the occasion more often than not. That gets better as the playoffs go along. What's going on in this Edmonton series is really an outlier for who Mikko Rantanen has been. But I think, again, there are reasons for it. Dallas is Mikko Rantanen is supposed to be kind of the finishing touch to kind of put them over the top. But if you don't have the foundation that you thought you did, right, this foundation of a deep team that can get scoring from multiple lines, then Mikko Rantanen's not going to be that guy for you. And I don't think it's necessarily a criticism of Mikko Rantanen, but just the reality of most players that are wingers in the NHL. Meanwhile, you have Edmonton with even as highly as you think of Mikko Rantanen, he's the third best player in this series. Edmonton's got the best too. But Mikko Rantanen's not going to get Dallas to where they want to go if nobody else is pulling in the same direction. And so now you have a situation where Dallas is one game away from being eliminated, same as the Carolina Hurricanes. Which brings up my next point that I'll get to after the break. We have 4 conference finals in the NHL and the NBA. All 3 of them are 3-1. Which team in the one column has the best chance to make a comeback? Get to that next here on Extra Sports 1300. So all of these conference finals are about done. Sure doesn't seem like we're going to get any game sevens in the NHL or the NBA. Pacers and Oilers winning last night, so their series are both at 3-1. Panthers and Thunder both tonight with a chance to close out their series. But if I had to pick a team that I would back more than the others to make a comeback, I think I'd have to pick up where I just left off. And I think I'd have to say the Dallas Stars. Because I don't think the Dallas Stars are playing nearly up to the level that they should be. I think Carolina is exactly who Carolina is, and Florida's just that much better. I think the Knicks just can't slow down the Pacers. They just can't control the tempo in that series. It's just a really bad matchup for them because the Pacers speed them up and they're horrendous when they try to play at the pace that most NBA teams wouldn't be able to handle the pace. I think it's Dallas. And while I do think that the Stars are playing under their potential, I think my reasoning for saying them actually has very little to do with them, because I think at any point, Stuart Skinner could absolutely implode. Like every game I watch, every save that he makes, I'm just waiting. And that's just been the Stuart Skinner experience. Like, he has no one to blame but himself. To his credit, he has been pretty lights out for a while now in the playoffs. But at the start of the playoffs, he was horrendous. And he has that in his past. It's like, almost like Connor Hellebuck without the highest of highs. Right? Connor Hellebuck during the regular season is the best goaltender in hockey, bar none. But even when he has a really good game in the playoffs, you go, okay, but wait till the next game. He had a good period. Wait till the second period rolls around. Like Connor Hellebuck in the playoffs, we have that. Stuart Skinner has that too. You're just waiting. And what's it going to take? They have Pickard behind him. So if it was game 5 that Stuart Skinner implodes, would Knobloch go quickly to Pickard? Or would he give Skinner another chance? Kind of think maybe he would give Skinner another chance to right the ship. He doesn't, and all of a sudden the Stars are right back in this thing. So if I had to pick one of these 3 teams, Timberwolves, Knicks, Hurricanes, and Stars, I would say the most likely of 4 very unlikely candidates would be Dallas. And I could give Minnesota a puncher's chance. And we'll see tonight, because Anthony Edwards has it in his game that he can absolutely go off. We don't have the consistency from Anthony Edwards in this series. But if he gets going and he stays consistent, then Minnesota may be able to make this thing interesting. I don't want to, though, make it seem like I think any one of these teams down 3-1 are going to win the series. We are going to get NBA Finals, OKC, Indiana, and Florida, Edmonton again in the NHL. These 4 series are over. And even when I try to do one of these fun games, I can't for too long suspend reality. None of them are coming back. But maybe if we set the bar to be who can win their next game, who can maybe make the series a bit more interesting. I'll go Dallas in the NHL, and certainly Minnesota being more likely than the Knicks. That might be a very pro Tyrese Halliburton crowd at MSG. And that's the unique thing about Madison Square Garden is they are such ball knowers and appreciators of great basketball that they can actually turn on their own team because they're there just to watch great basketball. Like, they'd love for it to come from the Knicks. But if somebody is doing like what Tyrese Halliburton has done and what he did last night in Game 4 in Indiana, you're going to get some people who are going to start celebrating what Halliburton's doing. And I don't think that's a defect. It's just it's the basketball city. And they just love great basketball. They would love for it to come from their team, but they're not going to sit on their hands. They're not going to boo when they're watching a great performance, even if they're in the other jersey. And I think that's what you saw in the first couple of games of this series, is that the crowd kind of turned a little bit on the Knicks. They weren't piling on the Knicks. They were just appreciating what they were seeing from Indiana. And again, the pace. The pace that Indiana plays at for a team that just doesn't really have a bench and does like to play their starters a lot of minutes, and their starters aren't players that like to play fast. Think Cat likes to get up and down the court. But bad matchup. I don't think that the Pacers necessarily are this much better than New York. But it's like the worst possible matchup. And that's what the playoffs are now in the NBA. About matchups more than anything else. So would have liked to see one of these series be compelling. None of them have particularly been compelling. But you've gotten some amazing performances. SGA, Halliburton. I think it's been team on the ice. I just Sam Bennett has been obviously the standout for Florida. But I mean, this entire Florida team, they're just built for this. Just what everything that playoff hockey is, Florida encapsulates it. And I think Edmonton, to their credit, I mean, the way that Stuart Skinner's playing, the way that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is playing. Remember when Ryan Nugent-Hopkins was supposed to be the savior of that franchise? And he's turned into a very good player. But the bust word was floating around a little bit with Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. I mean, at times he's outshined McDavid and Draisaitl. And then I guess that's shortchanging. I guess I would say the best thing about these series, the best thing about the Thunder Pacers series, or Thunder and Pacers series is plural, is some of the individual performances. But obviously both Indiana and OKC, their depth and how good of a team they are is a big reason why they're winning the series. But what Tyrese Halliburton did last night was unbelievable. The numbers he put up, that triple-double, Oscar, Joker, Halliburton. That's the list. And Halliburton did it without turning the ball over, playing at a breakneck pace the entire time. I'm telling you, one player going to get the narrative next year for NBA MVP, Indianapolis. It's going to be Halliburton. From voted the most overrated player in the NBA to being the almost universal preseason pick for MVP next year. It'd be Tyrese Halliburton. Which one of the teams down 3-1 do you think has the best chance to give us a little something before we get to the Stanley Cup and NBA Finals? 719-247-1313. Coming up next, the three biggest pieces of the introductory press conference of David Adelman. That's next here on Extra Sports 1300. Hello there. Welcome in to a Wednesday edition of Drive Time Sports. I am Ryan Kaufman, and it is my pleasure to have you, whether you're listening to the show on air, online, or through the Extra Sports 1300 app, or whether you're watching on our social media platforms at Extra Sports 1300. I greatly appreciate your patronage. If you would like to do more than just watch or listen, and you would like to be a part of the show yourself, be my guest. 719-247-1313. You could call or text in your thoughts, or you can tweet them at me at Gingerly Tweets. Perhaps you would have some reaction to the three stories that are driving the show that all revolve around today's introductory press conference for David Adelman, the next head coach of the Denver Nuggets. All right, we start because Josh Kroenke was there. My biggest takeaway was actually from something Josh Kroenke said. Here's story number one.
There's a firm belief that they can achieve their ultimate goal. Can they achieve that as currently constructed? I think the answer, as Yoke said after the playoffs ended, was obviously no. So we need to take a hard look at how we can raise our ceiling going forward, whether that's internally or externally.
I think there was a shift in tone today, or at least a better positioning statement by Josh Kroenke, because when I heard him a week ago after the season came to an end, It seemed like there was an unwillingness to look at every aspect of this roster and acknowledge that perhaps the Nuggets just don't have enough talent. And I've said really since Michael Malone got fired and more of the focus was on the roster, is it that the Nuggets won't look at making significant changes to this roster, or they can't? Because I think they are two distinctly different things. Won't is unacceptable. You are now 2 years removed from a championship. You still have the best player on planet Earth. The idea that you would have as much loyalty to Nikola Jokic as you would any other player on the roster is nonsense. Most of your loyalty has to go to him. Maybe all of your loyalty. If you can't help Jokic win another ring, then you don't need to be here. So won't is not okay. Whether it's Jamal Murray, whether it's Michael Porter, Christian Brown, won't is unacceptable. Can't, as disappointing as that would be, is a little bit more acceptable. There is a chance as we mock all these trades and they should get rid of this guy and bring in this guy and they should trade this for that, and all of us hammering away on the trade machine. I think you and I do acknowledge that there's a very good chance that the Denver Nuggets actually can't do much of anything. Or at least can't make the huge transformational changes that I think are really need to happen. They need to make their roster more compliant with the direction that the NBA is heading. And Josh Kroenke brings up how it was built under a different financial set of rules. Then make your roster fit under the current financial set of rules. And the reason why they don't fit the current economic model is because of their core four players. It's not because they have Peyton Watson on the roster. So if you have a problem, and that's why we can talk about depth all we want, and obviously the Denver Nuggets need to get deeper. But let's not lose sight of the fact that the core of this team is flawed. That some of these players that helped you win a championship just a couple years ago are not the players they were in that season. Perhaps that season is proving to be more of an outlier for some of the members of your team. But when we talk about the real deficiency of this Nuggets roster, it might be in the core four. The core four has not allowed them to acquire depth. And I don't even know that this core four is as viable a championship core as it was a couple of years ago. And acknowledging that and saying we're at least willing to look at the possibility of moving these guys, I think is a different tone that Josh Kroenke had as opposed to his last press conference. But I think it is a more welcome message, because it is wholly unsatisfying to just hear the internal improvement. The internal improvement was the argument they made for letting KCP go, and it was the argument they made for why they beat a better three-point shooting team. Do you think that really either worked out the way that the Nuggets envisioned it would? I would say no. Christian Brown's ascension more than the three-point shooting, certainly, but I don't think either quite, especially when an alternative was you just keep Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. So the internal improvement thing, yes, there's got to be some of that, but it may not be enough. It probably won't be enough to get the Nuggets to where they need to go. Thus, why at least being willing to investigate what they would get back in a trade for a Porter or a Murray is what is necessary. And I thought today Josh Kroenke spoke a little bit more to that than he did a week ago. It might be can't. We have to brace ourselves for that. It might be can't, but it can't be won't. I think that makes sense. Now, as far as what the Nuggets need, either internally or externally, here's David Adelman on that for story number 2.
Consistent shooting. Obviously, the way we get guarded, and that's nothing new. That's not like it's just for us. I mean, if you're watching these series, Shea and Anthony Edwards are getting triple teamed. They're coming from all over the place. And we brought this up during the playoffs, and it's funny, Julian's sitting right here. I mean, his game 6, was incredible. And then you saw what Lou Dort did, in game 5. Like there's a premium on shot making at, the times you need it.
So whether it's internal or external, guys that can knock down shots is a must if the Denver Nuggets are going to get back to where they want to be. And David Adelman is 1,000% right. You look at the Oklahoma City series, and some of the corner threes, which is outside of a breakaway dunk, maybe the highest percentage shot in all of basketball, and the Nuggets were objectively terrible shooting them. That can't happen. Christian Brown should be much better than he was shooting corner threes. Russell Westbrook, I don't expect a lot out of him, but find somebody who will take those three so Russell Westbrook doesn't have to. And it's something we've talked about since the Nuggets season ended. What they need to seek out in any trade, whether it's packaging up their young players, whether it's trading a Jamal Murray, whether it's trading a Michael Porter. But I always hesitate to include Michael Porter from the standpoint of he's one of the guys that you can get three-point shooting from. So you don't want to cut off your nose to spite your face, right? You don't just the desire to get rid of Michael Porter and not bringing back anyone that can knock down threes. You're making yourself worse in the way that you need to get better. But that's on the shopping list. That's on the grocery list for the Denver Nuggets and whoever might be their next general manager, which there is no update on that. But there is an update on what to expect from David Adelman moving forward, and that is, in many ways, more of the same. Here's story number 3.
These guys are some of the most accomplished players in the NBA, not just the last 3 years, the last 6, 7, 8 years that have been through the wars of the playoffs and seen it all. So to develop trust with them during that time was really important to me. That's going to continue. And I want to talk about this before this is over. What you saw from these guys communication-wise is going to continue next year. These guys, this is their team. And what they want to do next year and the goals they have is going to come down to what they want. And I'm there to help, to shepherd this. But this is about them.
Part of the reason why I thought that David Adelman would be a good hire once I saw him coach this team is that it seemed to me he clearly recognizes that they are at a different stage of their arc as a franchise. The players are at different stages of their careers, and David Adelman has talked about it. Like, they're grown men now. They've most of the guys on this roster won a title. And in the end, Michael Malone was just a little bit too much to deal with because he had one way of coaching. And it's similar to why Tom Thibodeau probably has had more NBA jobs than a guy as good of a coach as he is should have, it's because kind of wears on you. And Michael Malone wore on this basketball team. And it's not meant to be this huge criticism of Michael Malone, because I think the minute Michael Malone gets back in the league, I would expect the team that he takes over to be very good in a relatively short amount of time. But therein lies the pivot that this organization needed at the coaching position. Michael Malone is best served to coach a young team with lower expectations that is looking to know what it takes to succeed at the highest level in the league. He already did that for the Denver Nuggets. He gets credit for that. But I think what many people within the Nuggets organization were hoping was that he would have a different speed, that he would himself would pivot and would allow the players to kind of take the reins a little bit more, and he never did. He has one speed of coaching, and it works with a certain type of team, and the Nuggets are not that team anymore. David Adelman gets it. So if you love watching Nikola Jokic go absolutely berserker in a timeout, you're going to be happy because you're going to see it a lot more. David Adelman knows that he needs to be a little bit more about tactics, right? Especially on the defensive end. He talked about this today. They're not going to man up on defense every single game. Now, he didn't say this. This is me saying this part now, because the Nuggets are not good defensively. They need some help schematically, and that's what David Adelman is going to do. But he's also going to play a little bit of psychologist, right? Managing the egos, managing the minutes, that kind of stuff. But we could talk about the timing of hiring him before GM and how that might impact who the Denver Nuggets can bring in. But just in a vacuum, watching David Adelman coach, listening to him, he gets it. He understands where this team is and what they need from a coach. And it seems like he's the right person to be that guy. So what you saw from the Nuggets, from David Adelman, from the players on the court, you can expect more of the same. Now the question becomes, how different will the personnel be once the Nuggets get back out on the court this fall? 719-247-1313. Take your thoughts on the comments you heard from David Adelman and Josh Kroenke. Coming up next, I've seen, we've already started with this, the offseason lists ranking quarterbacks, and now that the Broncos have a quarterback worth ranking, people are getting very upset about where Bo Nix is landing on some of these lists. I have a theory why, and it's going to be no one's fault but his coaches. I'll explain next here on Extra Sports 1300. It is that time of year for a tradition unlike any other for us to collectively lose our minds over where quarterbacks are ranked in regards to one another. Seen a few lists come out over the last couple of days, and now that the Denver Broncos have a quarterback actually worth ranking, Broncos fans, you're still not pleased. I don't know what it will take. What will it take? Tell me what it will take for you to be fully satisfied with how the outside world views your football team and the players on it. Because for once, the Denver Broncos don't have one of the 5 worst quarterbacks in the league. And it's still not good enough. Bo Nix. On one list, I'm just pulling up random ones. There's a billion of them out there. CBS has him 15th. Not high enough. Bo Nix, not high enough. Pro Football Focus has him 19th. I always feel like this is a helpful exercise. Just start writing out quarterbacks that you know for a fact are better than Bo Nix, which I did. Tell me that any one of these quarterbacks I mentioned that you would even consider putting Bo Nix above after one season in the NFL. Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, Jaden Daniels, Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford, Baker Mayfield. Maybe that last one is a little bit, maybe you want to argue with me about Baker Mayfield. But even if I took off Baker, those are 9 quarterbacks that you would be an absolute knucklehead to even suggest that Bo Nix is better than any one of those 9 quarterbacks I just mentioned. So maybe Baker's not the guy. Maybe you don't say Caleb Williams is. What do we do with Sam Darnold? Can Sam Darnold be considered better than Bo Nix? He had a better year last year than Bo Nix, which is Bo Nix's 1 year. But because of what he was before, you have to put Bo Nix ahead of him. How about Brock Purdy? How about Trevor Lawrence? He's won a playoff game or gone to the playoffs. Yeah, won a playoff game. And I haven't even mentioned Jalen Hurts. And I would put Jalen Hurts above Bo Nix. But Jalen Hurts is usually the guy that I'm trying to push down the list, and I'm saying stop overhyping Jalen Hurts because he's not one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the league. He's probably not. Maybe he's 10th. Let's put him in here. So Mahomes, Herbert, Lamar, Burrow, Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts, Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford. That's 10. And we're crying over the fact that Bo Nix is in the teens. Where's Bo Nix right now? Probably somewhere between 15 and 20. No higher than 15th. He's no higher than 15th. I think I know part of why the reaction. And I haven't even mentioned CJ Stroud yet. Is CJ Stroud better than Bo Nix? I think so. At best, Bo Nix is the 15th best quarterback in the league. And that is an amazing thing to say about a guy who's played 1 season in the National Football League. He's probably more like 20, but I don't want to, make too many people angry. But there's no way he's one of the inside the top 15. 15th at the absolute best, and I think even that is overrating him. But I think what it is, what people were really bothered by and I noticed this on the Pro Football Focus list. I think what's triggering some people is when Bo Nix is the fourth best quarterback in the division. That's what really sets people off. When Geno Smith is higher than Bo Nix, it sets people off. So I don't know. I think there's some people that I don't know where Bo Nix is, but he's better than Geno Smith. Do I think that Bo Nix will ultimately be better than Geno Smith? I think there's a good chance. Is he better right now than Geno Smith? I know his name has become mud so much that you can't bear to think of. Are we sure that Geno Smith right now isn't a better quarterback than Bo Nix after year one? But I think that's what's triggering people. Because how dare the Raiders quarterback be higher than the Broncos quarterback? And how dare Bo Nix be the fourth best quarterback in the division? But you know who you should really get mad at? Don't get mad at Pro Football Focus. I learned a long time ago with specifically Pro Football Focus. People are so funny this way. They will use Pro Football Focus to their advantage, and they will laugh it off and dismiss it as pseudoscience when it doesn't make their argument. You ever notice that? Because you know why? No one understands what they do. No, Chris Collinsworth doesn't understand what Pro Football Focus does, and don't let him tell you any different. Pro Football Focus, nobody understands how they rate anything. But when Quinn Meinerz is Pro Football Focus rated number one best interior lineman, it's like Pro Football Focus said so. But when they rank Bo Nix 19th best quarterback, no one even knows what Pro Football Focus does. It's pseudo football science. No other source of information out there in the sports media landscape is weaponized like Pro Football Focus numbers because no one fully understands what they do. And you will use it to enhance your argument, and you will dismiss it if it flies in the face of your argument. So that's just a helpful tip with Pro Football Focus. How about you just not, and I have nothing against Pro Football Focus. I'm just saying maybe don't make it the core of your argument. But here's the thing. You really want someone to blame? Blame Sean Payton. Blame Sean Payton. You know why? Because in the eyes of most people that cover football, Bo Nix is a Sean Payton creation. And why is that? Because Sean Payton tells you that Bo Nix is a Sean Payton creation. The idea here, and you understand, I know it feels like it's been forever since Bo Nix was drafted. It has been just 1 year. There's still some lingering effects of Bo Nix being the sixth best quarterback in his draft. And while they're giving credit to Sean Payton, yes, it does seem like they're diminishing what you saw from Bo Nix this year. But Sean Payton is the most to blame. Sean Payton's whole identity right now with the Denver Broncos is give me these lesser players. I don't need the best players. I need my players, and we're going to win. And to his credit, they did this year. But he even did this in this year's draft. He took not one of the lesser talented running backs in R.J. Harvey, because I do think he's talented, but you could name a handful of running backs at least that are better than R.J. Harvey. And I talked about this yesterday. Sean Payton wants the right puzzle pieces. He likes R.J. Harvey because he's difficult to tackle. He likes Pat Bryant because he has good hands. He doesn't care about the other stuff because he has a very specific vision for what he wants in his offense, and he's lacking certain skill sets that he can then use to exploit matchups. So it doesn't matter that R.J. Harvey's probably the 8th or 9th best running back in this year's draft class overall. He might be the most difficult running back to bring down of where the Broncos after the first round running backs. And Pat Bryant's not faster than most of these wide receivers. He's not better than most of it, but he can catch the ball. Because that's all he needs. He just needs the one skill set. He will implement it. He will complement it with other players with complementary skill sets. And he will outcoach his counterpart on the other sideline. That is Sean Payton's whole identity. But when you do that, we tend to look at the players that you have on your roster and say, I think they're being enhanced a little bit by Sean Payton. And these are people that are trying to look at the quarterbacks objectively as they can. And there's still some of the thought processes that they had when Bo Nix was coming out of Oregon. That's still in there a little bit. And then there's also I like some of the stuff that Bo Nix is doing, but come on. Without Sean Payton, what would Bo Nix have been in his rookie year? And that's not totally unfair, but it is kind of maybe diminishing what Bo Nix actually did this year. In fact, I have to laugh because the thing that Bo Nix surprised me the most with this year, and why I would probably say that Bo Nix now is a better quarterback than I thought he was going to be at this point coming out of Oregon, is the very same thing that Sean Payton paid no attention to. His ability to run. Sean Payton could not care less about Bo Nix's legs, and yet that was the biggest thing that I watched this year and said, I didn't know Bo Nix had that. That makes him a better quarterback in my mind. He's got a little dual threat ability. Sean Payton wasn't even looking for that. So I don't, having him somewhere between 15 and 20 is the right place to have Bo Nix. Like, come on now. Now, I've seen some lists that have like Drake May above him, and that's preposterous. But the couple lists I brought up, like just CBS's, because it's the more flattering because he's 15th. Dak, Stroud, Herbert, Baker, Purdy, Goff, Love, Stafford, Mahomes, Allen, Jackson, Burrow, Hurts, Daniels. Can you quarrel with any of those guys? I can't. Now, what I will quarrel with, so you're missing the point if you're upset that Bo Nix is only 15th. Why is Jalen Hurts back up here? Why are we doing this again with Jalen Hurts? Did we not learn the last time? This CBS ranking has Hurts above Burrow, Lamar, Allen, and Mahomes. Did we not learn our lesson last time? When people made Jalen Hurts one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league, and then Lamar Jackson, who is famously not included on some of those top 5 lists, went out and just eviscerated the rest of the league. We get so, like, we think about the Super Bowl, and Jalen Hurts was great in the Super Bowl. There were times during the Eagles season where there was real doubt that they could complete a forward pass. A.J. Brown was ready to revolt. The reason we thought he was reading the book on the sideline was because he was so mentally checked out because his quarterback can't complete a pass to him. But yet he plays great in the Super Bowl, which he absolutely did. And he's back up on the list. I think most of these lists are putting Bo Nix where he deserves to be. Now, this year, if he takes a step forward, because I kind of think that all of these rookie quarterbacks, well, specifically Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix, I think that they're both going to take a step back this year. Now, it doesn't mean a giant step back, and it doesn't mean that those two teams can't have similar success. Could be just a tiny step back. Could be just a CJ Stroud step back. But if he pushes forward and he's better this year, then he'll kind of break out of the, oh, you're a Sean Payton creation. But the person that makes people believe that all these players are Sean Payton creations is Sean Payton. Sean Payton is the star of the Denver Broncos. He is the face of the Denver Broncos organization. And he will do a lot of things to make sure he drives that home. Remember when Dre Greenlaw had his introductory press conference? Oh, wait, no, you didn't. You know why? Because Sean Payton doesn't believe in that. He doesn't believe in that. So the last voice you heard from with the Denver Broncos was Sean Payton. During the offseason, the voice you heard was Sean Payton. And I'm sure when OTAs begin, the first voice you're going to hear is Sean Payton. And you can't argue with the results, but you wonder why people don't think that Bo Nix is as good as you think he is. Blame Sean Payton. Because he makes everyone feel like he elevates everybody, that everybody is his creation. If Bo Nix keeps winning and Bo Nix improves year over year, then he'll start to break out of that. But after year one, come on. Where do you expect Bo Nix to be? Top 5, top 10? There's no chance he's in the top 10. And you're even being generous putting him in the top 15, if we're being honest. I love this time of year. I really do. These quarterback lists, I could say I hate them and they're stupid all I want. I can't get enough of them. So good. And I can already tell where Bo Nix is ranked, and I can tell that I am going to be triggered by how high Jalen Hurts is on all these lists, and he doesn't deserve to be there. Just doesn't. 719-24-7, 13-13 back after this. I have really stumbled into something, haven't I? So I started with literally, I'll just tell you what I was doing. I was going to talk about how people are complaining about how far down on these quarterback lists that are starting to come out that Bo Nix is. So I knew I wanted to pull up Pro Football Focus because that was one. And I pulled up just a random one because I've never seen a list that has Bo Nix super high on it. So I knew anyone that I would pull up. And so I pull up this CBS Sports one. And what I stumble across, forget where they have Bo Nix. Who gives a care? Look, this list is like terrible. I got a text from the 719. Allen at 5 is ridiculous. Yes, I am a Bills fan, but Mahomes, Jackson, and Allen and Burrow in any order you want for top 4. But Hurts, not just the fact that Josh Allen is 5. Jaden Daniels is 1. You want to talk about not learning from previous mistakes. Jalen Hurts went to a Super Bowl. Everyone put him in the top 5, and the very next year, they had to apologize and have their football knowledge card revoked. They have Jaden Daniels at 1. And I'm with you here. Here's the thing, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to put together my list because it's easy for me to take jabs at other lists. You know what? I'm going to do the work, and we'll talk about it tomorrow. Make your list. I'll make mine. We'll compare. I'm telling you, this is the rule when it comes to quarterback lists. You are not allowed to put any quarterback in the league above Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, or Burrow. You put anyone else above any of those 4, and I'm tuning out. I'm not listening to you anymore. Because you're being a prisoner of the moment or you're being biased towards your team. I already know. Because there's no reasonable argument for putting any quarterback over those 4. I also have another rule. Joe Burrow must be 4th. Now, that might be a little bit more of a hot take. But it's those 4 and Joe Burrow's 4th. And I will hear arguments from all sides on why Lamar should be 1, Josh Allen should be 1. He is the MVP after all. And Mahomes should be 1. In fact, you don't have to worry about that last one. I'll go ahead and handle that. But the argument for who the best quarterback in the league is between 3 players. It's Mahomes, it's Allen, it's Mahomes, Allen, and Lamar. And then Joe Burrow deserves to be the next guy after that. Outside of that top 4, all bets are off. You want to be a prisoner in the moment with Jaden Daniels and you're 100% sure that he's going to take off like a rocket ship from here. Just like what we thought CJ Stroud would do after his rookie season, what Jalen Hurts would do after he went to a Super Bowl. Okay. You know, caveat emptor, but go for it. I think all bets are off after the top 4. But if you have anybody other than the Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Joe Burrow in your top 4, then you do not deserve to be taken seriously. Because right now, those are the 4 best quarterbacks in the league. And I will tell you why they deserve to be in the top 4 is because it's not particularly close between those 4 guys and the rest of the league right now. It's just not. Which is fine. I mean, gosh, you have 4 elite of the elite quarterbacks. That's fine. We had Brady and Manning, and the next best guy was Ben Roethlisberger at one point. Like, we're moving up in the world. We got more elite of elite quarterbacks. But it's Mahomes, it's Allen, it's Lamar. Rank them how you see fit, and we can have a discussion. And then it's Joe Burrow, and then we get on with the rest of the list. Jaden Daniels at number 1. That's clickbait. That's clickbait. Because there's no way that a reputable NFL writer would stake his reputation on a rookie quarterback being better than the reigning MVP, the 2-time MVP, and the quarterback that's leading a modern day NFL dynasty. That's just silly. That's silly behavior, and you're just doing it for clicks. And then to put Jalen Hurts at number 2, it's like, could you please go back and remember the rest of the Eagles season and not just the Super Bowl? Could you be more of a prisoner of the moment than having Jaden Daniels and Jalen Hurts as your top 2 quarterbacks? You know, sometimes, and I told a buddy of mine who's an Eagles fan this, and I love him to death. But I will support their right to do the tush push. I will defend it to the death. But sometimes when I see lists like this, I'm like, I kind of want them to ban the tush push and see what happens with Jalen Hurts. See what happens. They shouldn't ban the tush push. I have no problem with them doing it. But leave Jalen Hurts to his own devices. Do that. See how he converts. On those 3rd and 4th downs. When he can't be shoved across the line of scrimmage. Jason points out, and I got to be fair, Jason, you know what? You're right. Brady, Manning, Breeze, then Ben. Fair. But, you know, Drew Brees, byproduct of Sean Payton. Right? One-time, all-time leader in passing yards. It was Sean Payton. Nope, you're right. That's on me. I was shooting from the hip, and I misspoke, and I apologize. Breeze was up there, but never with the top 2. Never in an argument above Brady or Manning. And then Ben Roethlisberger, who I liked, and absolutely a Hall of Fame quarterback. But come on now. Put Ben Roethlisberger on this list. Compare him to Josh Allen. Compare him to Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson or Joe Burrow. Like, there's a difference. Here's the difference. Are you, from the 719, are you looking at fantasy QB ratings? No, that is a great question. I am not. It is not fantasy quarterbacks. It is just, you know what? It's power rankings. Power rankings. Where logic goes out the window. Power rankings. So Josh Allen wins the MVP. Wins the MVP at the end of the regular season. He wins the MVP, as you recall. Not that long ago. Not that many weeks go by, and now he's 5th. So maybe that's their wiggle room. It's the power rankings, where you can be a little bit more of a prisoner of the moment. But even this guy acknowledges recency bias, sure. It's not, but it does not say fantasy. And if it said fantasy, you would have Lamar. You have Lamar higher. Nope. This is QB power rankings. Power rankings. Jalen Hurts does not. If power rankings just means the last impressive thing I saw, then I don't want anything to do with power rankings. I just don't. Because then they are nonsense. Because our what happens if Cam Ward goes into Denver week 1 and has a great game for some reason? I don't think he will, but let's just pretend for a moment. Is he going to be now the number 1 quarterback at the top of the QB power rankings? Cam Ward after game 1? Even this guy's acknowledging, like, yeah, I didn't get this right. So I'll do it. I'll do it. It's easy for us to, say this guy's too low, this guy's too high. I'll make my own list, and I'll report back tomorrow. Appreciate your patronage. Enjoy your evening. Wolves and Canes. Going to extend the series tonight. We'll find out. Talk to you tomorrow.